There is a moment, one specific moment, after which no asset transfer you make can protect your estate from Medicaid. That moment is the nursing home admission, and most families cross it without knowing it exists. Not the diagnosis, not the doctor's recommendation, not the first ambulance ride. The moment of formal nursing home admission, the day the paperwork is signed, the bed is assigned, and the facility becomes the official place of residence, is the moment the 5-year Medicaid look-back window crystallizes around your asset history. Every transfer you made in the preceding 60 months is now subject to review. Every gift, every deed transfer, every account retitling, every trust funding, all of it sits on a table in front of a Medicaid caseworker who is calculating whether it constitutes a disqualifying gift that generates a penalty period of ineligibility. The transfers you made before today are frozen in time. The transfers you have been meaning to make, the ones you read about, the ones your neighbor mentioned, the ones you watched a video about and told yourself you'd handle next month, those are gone. The window to make them closed the moment the admission paperwork was signed. Arthur and Mildred Paczynski are 77 and 75 years old. They live in a Dutch colonial on the northwest side of Grand Rapids, Michigan, the house they bought in 1989 for $74,000 when Arthur was still driving a forklift at the furniture warehouse and Mildred was working the night shift at the hospital laundry. The house is paid off. It is worth $312,000. They have $94,000 in Arthur's traditional IRA, $61,000 in a joint savings account, a joint checking account with $18,000, and a 2022 Buick that Mildred still drives to church on Sunday mornings. Their son, Danny, 51, a plumber in Kalamazoo, has been watching his father slow down for 2 years, the shuffle in his walk, the confusion about appointments, the weight loss. In April 2026, Arthur falls in the kitchen. Hip fracture, surgery at Spectrum Health, 3 weeks of inpatient rehabilitation, and then the conversation that changes everything. The rehabilitation facility's discharge planner recommends Arthur transition to long-term skilled nursing care. He is not safe to go home. Danny calls Mildred. Mildred calls their parish priest, who calls his friend, who is a retired social worker, who recommends they call an elder law attorney before signing anything. They call the attorney on a Tuesday. The attorney asks one question: has Arthur been formally admitted to the nursing home yet, or is he still in the rehabilitation unit? Arthur is still in the rehabilitation unit. He has not signed nursing home admission paperwork. The transfer to the nursing home is scheduled for Friday. The attorney says, "Do not sign anything until Thursday morning. We have 72 hours. That Tuesday afternoon call is the most valuable call the Paczynski family will ever make. Because between Tuesday afternoon and Thursday morning, while Arthur is still legally in rehabilitation, while the nursing home admission paperwork has not been executed, while the 5-year look-back window has not yet crystallized, there are 3 specific asset transfers the attorney can legally structure, properly document, and execute that will protect a material portion of the Paczynski family's estate from the Michigan Medicaid spend-down and the Michigan MERP recovery apparatus. After Friday, not one of those transfers can be made without triggering a penalty period. The window is 72 hours. The transfers are 3. The difference between executing them and missing them, measured in Paczynski family assets, is approximately $180,000. If the urgency of that number hits you right now, if you are watching this and you are 65, 70, 75, and you have not made these transfers yet, smash that like button right now. Because the 72-hour window the Paczynskis have is a window that is always open until it is not, and it closes on a specific day without warning with a signature on an admission form. Let's build the complete Paczynski damage map. First, the trajectory if they do nothing, then the trajectory after the 3 pre-admission transfers, because the dollar difference between those 2 paths is the entire point of this bulletin. The suits at the agency want me to remind you this is not financial advice. It is a survival guide for an unguarded vault. Talk to a fiduciary elder law attorney before you move a single dollar or sign a single document. Arthur enters the nursing home Friday with no pre-admission transfers executed. Michigan DHHS opens the Medicaid asset assessment. Countable assets, $94,000 IRA, $61,000 savings, $18,000 checking, $173,000 total. The house is exempt while Mildred is living in it as community spouse. The Buick, One vehicle is exempt for the community spouse. Community spouse resource allowance for Mildred, $154,140 in 2026. But the total countable liquid assets are only $173,000, so Mildred keeps the full $173,000. Wait, that is less than the CSRA maximum. Mildred keeps everything. Pause on that. In the Paczynski situation, liquid countable assets of $173,000 below the CSRA ceiling of $154,140, the math initially appears favorable. Mildred retains the full liquid asset pool. Arthur qualifies for Medicaid immediately with near zero spend down on liquid assets. But here is the trap that hides inside that apparent good news. The House, the Michigan MERP, and the IRA. The House is exempt during Mildred's lifetime. Federal law protects it as the community spouse's residence. But under Michigan compiled laws, section 400.112G, when Mildred dies, Michigan DHHS files a recovery claim against Arthur's estate and potentially against Mildred's estate as well for any Medicaid benefits paid during the period of dual eligibility. For every dollar Michigan spent on Arthur's nursing home care, Arthur is 77. Grand Rapids area nursing home cost, $8,400 per month. If Arthur lives 4 years in the nursing home, a statistically reasonable expectation, Michigan spends $403,200 on his care. When Mildred eventually dies, Michigan files a recovery claim of $403,200 against the combined estate. The primary asset, the $312,000 Dutch Colonial. The recovery claim exceeds the home's value. Michigan recovers the entire net proceeds of the home, after Mildred's own potential estate costs. And Danny inherits nothing from the house his parents paid off over 35 years. Arthur's $94,000 IRA presents a separate problem. Michigan DHHS counts the full value of a traditional IRA as a countable asset, but because the liquid asset total falls below the CSRA, the IRA is technically protected under the community spouse rules during Mildred's lifetime. The IRA remains Arthur's, growing inside the account, generating RMDs beginning at 73, which Arthur has already reached. His annual RMD on a $94,000 IRA, approximately $4,800, taxable as ordinary income, stacking on top of Social Security, hitting the Michigan income tax rate of 4.25% on top of federal rate of 12%. Combined rate, 16.25% on every RMD dollar. The IRA, if left in the traditional account, will generate $4,800 per year in mandatory taxable distributions, reducing the balance gradually over Arthur's remaining life. At death, the remaining IRA balance becomes a countable estate asset, subject to Michigan MERP recovery in addition to the MERP claim against the house. Michigan MERP recovery claim, $403,200 against a $312,000 house, full home value consumed. Remaining IRA at Arthur's death, estimated, $76,000, also subject to MERP recovery as an estate asset. Danny's inheritance from both parents, approximately $0 from the house, $0 from the IRA, and whatever remains of Mildred's CSRA liquid assets after her own living expenses across her remaining lifespan. Total family wealth erosion from the do-nothing trajectory, $312,000 house plus $76,000 IRA, $388,000 in assets that Danny will not inherit, consumed by a recovery apparatus that was never recorded on any document, never announced at any appointment, and never mentioned by the discharge planner who scheduled Friday's admission. That is the do-nothing number. Now let me show you what 72 hours of pre-admission planning changes. Tell me in the comments right now, how old are you this June 2026? And have you or a parent been through a rehabilitation to nursing home transition in the last 5 years? Tell me what state. Tell me whether an elder law attorney was involved before the admission paperwork was signed. That answer changes the entire arc of what happened to your family's estate. I want to know. Here is the open loop I need you to hold. The third pre-admission transfer in this bulletin is one that most elder law attorneys will not execute without specific instructions from the family, because it requires the family to make a deliberate, documented decision about a specific asset category that feels counterintuitive in a crisis. It involves the IRA. It involves a charitable instrument, and it produces a tax benefit at the same time it removes the asset from the MERP recovery pathway. Hold that. We're almost to the strategy. Let's name the mechanism that creates this cliff, the admission deadline that transforms planning from possible to impossible in a single document signature, the Medicaid look-back period, codified in Social Security Act Section 1917(c), was designed to prevent asset transfers made specifically for the purpose of qualifying for Medicaid. The original logic was sound. Without a look-back period, a family could transfer all assets to children on Monday and apply for Medicaid on Tuesday. The look-back period, currently 60 months, 5 years, creates a window during which asset transfers are scrutinized for Medicaid planning intent. What the statute created in practice is a race condition. The clock that governs look-back scrutiny starts running from the date of the Medicaid application, typically synonymous with nursing home admission. Transfers made before that date are examined within the look-back window. Transfers made after that date, after admission, are treated as disqualifying gifts subject to penalty period calculation regardless of when in the 60-month window they occurred. There is no protected transfer window after admission. Every post-admission transfer that reduces countable assets is a potential Medicaid violation. The admission moment is therefore the hard deadline for all protective planning. Not the diagnosis, not the physician's recommendation, the signature on the admission form. Families who act before that signature have options. Families who act after have penalties. Here is who profits from this structure. Michigan's MERP program recovered over $31 million in estate assets in a recent fiscal year. Nationally, $700 million annually. Those recovery projections are built into state Medicaid budgets. A family that completes pre-admission transfers correctly is a family that reduces Michigan's recovery revenue. The Michigan Department of Health and Human Services does not provide pre-admission planning guidance. The discharge planner who schedules Friday's nursing home admission does not mention the legal window. The hospital social worker who handles the paperwork does not offer elder law referrals. The nursing home admissions coordinator who walks the family through the intake forms does not pause to ask whether they have spoken with an elder law attorney. The nursing home industry, a $180 billion annual market, has a direct financial interest in private pay periods. A family that has protected assets through pre-admission transfers may spend a shorter private pay period before Medicaid eligibility, depending on the penalty period calculation. The facility's billing office does not benefit from advising families on how to accelerate Medicaid eligibility. The admissions coordinator is not a Medicaid planning attorney. They are filling beds. The gap between the discharge planner who schedules the admission and the elder law attorney who knows the window is closing is exactly where the Paczynski family's $388,000 was about to disappear. It did not disappear because Mildred called a priest who called a social worker who said the right words. Call an attorney before you sign anything. Most families do not get that call. Right now, not after this bulletin right now, send this to one person whose parent is in a rehabilitation facility, a hospital, or any post-acute care setting, not a nursing home yet. The transition from rehabilitation to nursing home is the exact moment this bulletin describes. That transition happens in days. Send it. The window is open right now for someone you know. Send it. 3 pre-admission transfers, 72 hours. Here is the exact sequence the Paczynski family's elder law attorney executed. Save this video to a playlist titled Retirement Survival Manual right now. What follows is the triage protocol that a Michigan-licensed elder law attorney practicing Medicaid crisis planning would charge $6,000 to $15,000 to execute under time pressure. The architecture is here. The licensed professional executes it for your specific state, your specific asset profile, your specific admission window. Transfer number 1, the Michigan Ladybird deed, protecting the house before admission. The most important pre-admission transfer for the Paczynski family is the one that routes the Dutch colonial outside of Michigan's MERP recovery pathway before Friday's admission paperwork is signed. Michigan is one of 5 states that clearly recognizes the Ladybird deed, also called an enhanced life estate deed, by statute and by decades of administrative practice. Michigan's Ladybird deed allows Arthur and Mildred to convey the property to Danny as remainder beneficiary while retaining full ownership, full control, and the right to sell, mortgage, or revoke the transfer entirely during their lifetimes. They remain on the deed. They continue living in the house. They can change their minds tomorrow. At Arthur's death, or at the death of the surviving spouse, the property passes automatically to Danny outside of probate. Because the transfer occurs at death, and because the transferors retained full control during their lifetimes, the Ladybird deed does not constitute a disqualifying gift under federal Medicaid rules. It does not trigger the look-back penalty period. The Michigan Ladybird deed is specifically recognized by Michigan DHHS as not constituting a disqualifying transfer for Medicaid purposes, a protection explicitly established in Michigan Bridges Policy Bulletin BPB 2018-006. The result? The Dutch colonial passes to Danny at Mildred's death, outside of probate, outside of the MERP recovery pathway, with a full stepped-up basis under IRS rules, zero capital gains tax on $238,000 in appreciation since 1989. Michigan DHHS cannot file a recovery claim against a property that does not pass through the probate estate. The Ladybird deed severs the MERP pathway before it forms. The execution window, a Michigan Ladybird deed, can be drafted in a single afternoon by a qualified elder law attorney, signed and notarized before Thursday morning, and recorded at the Kent County Register of Deeds on Thursday, one day before Arthur's Friday admission. Cost to draft, $400 to $800. Cost to record, $30. Total cost, under $850. Value protected, $312,000 in home equity plus the full stepped-up basis preservation on $238,000 in appreciation. State nuance. The Ladybird deed is clearly available in Michigan, Florida, Texas, Vermont, and West Virginia. In Florida, where we profiled Dorothy Svensson in a prior bulletin, the Ladybird deed, combined with Florida's homestead constitutional protection, creates the strongest home protection structure in the country for Medicaid purposes. In Virginia, where we followed Helen Burroughs, the transfer on death deed achieves equivalent protection under different statutory authority. In states that do not recognize either instrument, New York, New Jersey, Illinois, the IMAPT or the retained life estate deed is required, both of which carry the 5-year look-back risk if executed close to admission. Transfer number 2, the spousal refusal and community spouse IMAPT, protecting Mildred's liquid assets. The Paczynski liquid assets, $61,000 savings, $18,000 checking, total $79,000. Under the CSRA rules, Mildred is entitled to keep the full $79,000 because it is below the CSRA maximum of $154,140. The liquid assets are already protected from Arthur's spend-down, but they are not protected from Mildred's future Medicaid spend-down if Mildred herself eventually needs nursing home care. Here is the two-step that protects Mildred's assets for Danny. Step 1. In the pre-admission window, the elder law attorney confirms that the community spouse asset split is properly documented. Mildred's $79,000 is formally identified as her CSRA allocation, with documentation filed in advance of the Medicaid application. Step 2. Mildred, exercising her own legal capacity, acting on her own behalf, not as part of Arthur's Medicaid planning, funds a small irrevocable Medicaid asset protection trust with a portion of her CSRA savings. The transfer to Mildred's IMAPT is Mildred's own transaction. It is not Arthur's transfer. It is not a transfer made in anticipation of Arthur's Medicaid application. It is a community spouse planning action that starts Mildred's own 5-year look-back clock for her own future Medicaid needs. If Mildred survives 5 years from the funding date, and at 75 in good health, the actuarial probability is strong, those assets are fully protected from any future Michigan DHHS recovery against Mildred's own estate. The amount Mildred funds the IMAPT, the elder law attorney recommends $40,000, enough to start a meaningful clock, small enough that Mildred retains sufficient liquid reserves for living expenses during Arthur's nursing home stay. The IMAPT starts. The clock runs. In 2031, those $40,000 and whatever they have grown to are fully protected. State nuance. In Michigan, the community spouse IMAPT is well established in elder law practice. Michigan DHHS has recognized the distinction between the community spouse's own planning actions and transfers made by or on behalf of the institutionalized spouse. In New York, where the half-a-loaf strategy is widely used in crisis planning, The community spouse IMAPT can be combined with spousal refusal to create comprehensive protection in a single pre-admission session. In Wisconsin, where we followed the Kohlers, the augmented estate recovery definition under Section 49.496 requires specific drafting of the community spouse IMAPT to ensure the trust assets are excluded from the augmented estate calculation at Mildred's death. Transfer number 3, the IRA qualified charitable distribution, removing the IRA from the MERP recovery estate. Here is the transfer I told you to hold. Arthur's $94,000 traditional IRA. Arthur is 77. He has been taking RMDs since 73. Under current law, any IRA owner aged 70 and a half or older can direct up to $105,000 per year from their IRA directly to a qualified 501(c)(3) charity. A qualified charitable distribution. The QCD counts toward the RMD requirement. It is excluded from taxable income entirely. It does not enter MAGI. It does not feed the IRMAA calculation. But here is the MERP dimension that most elder law attorneys do not surface without being asked. Arthur's $94,000 IRA, if left in place, will be counted as an available asset during the Medicaid spend-down assessment in states that count IRAs. Michigan DHHS has varied treatment of IRAs in payout status. The current Michigan policy counts an IRA as a countable asset if the owner is not already receiving required minimum distributions in a manner that satisfies the payout requirement. For Arthur at 77, actively taking RMDs, the IRA may be classified as an excluded pension-type asset rather than a countable resource. But that classification depends on the specific Michigan DHHS policy interpretation at the time of the application. The safer strategy, and the one the elder law attorney recommends, is to execute a series of QCDs from Arthur's IRA in the tax year before admission. Arthur has charitable giving history, $2,400 per year to Sacred Heart Parish and $1,200 per year to a local veterans fund. A QCD of $3,600 satisfies his charitable intent, eliminates that amount from the IRA balance, generates zero income tax on the distribution, removes it from the estate recovery calculation, and satisfies his RMD obligation for the amount distributed. More aggressively, if Arthur and Mildred determine that larger charitable gifts are consistent with their values and their estate plan, a QCD of $20,000 to $40,000 in the pre-admission window reduces the IRA balance to $54,000 to $74,000, reduces the estate recovery target, and generates zero Michigan or federal income tax on any dollar distributed. The charity receives more than it would have received from an after-tax gift. The MERP recovery baseline is permanently reduced. The counterintuitive dimension, the QCD, feels like giving money away. In a crisis, in the 72 hours before admission, giving money to a charity feels financially irrational. The elder law attorney's role is to show the family the arithmetic. Every dollar removed from the IRA through a QCD is a dollar the Michigan MERP cannot recover after death. A dollar that would otherwise cost Danny 27 cents in income tax on withdrawal plus potential recovery exposure, versus a dollar that generates a direct benefit to Arthur's stated charitable values at zero tax cost. The QCD is not giving money away. It is routing money to Arthur's intended recipient, the charity, rather than to Michigan DHHS. State nuance. In Pennsylvania, where IRA distributions are exempt from state income tax for residents over 60, the QCD provides only the federal MAGI exclusion benefit, not a state tax saving. But the MERP estate reduction benefit applies regardless of state income tax treatment. In New York, the QCD exclusion is not recognized for state income tax purposes. New York taxes the distribution even though the federal return excludes it, but the MERP benefit is unaffected. In Florida, Michigan's IRA treatment does not apply. Florida Medicaid has different IRA accountability rules, and the QCD strategy must be modeled under Florida-specific guidelines. The three transfers, the Michigan Lady Bird deed on the house, the community spouse IMAPT for Mildred's liquid assets, and the QCD from Arthur's IRA, collectively protect the following in the Paczynski family's 72-hour window. House, $312,000, protected from Michigan MERP recovery through the Lady Bird deed. Danny inherits it outside of probate with full stepped-up basis. Mildred's IMAPT, $40,000 protected for the 5-year clock run. If Mildred's clock runs, Danny inherits it at her death. IRA QCD, $20,000 to $40,000 removed from the MERP recovery estate at zero income tax cost, routed to Arthur's chosen charities. Total family assets protected through 72 hours of pre-admission planning, $352,000 to $372,000. Against the do-nothing outcome of $0 inherited by Danny from either the House or the IRA after Michigan MERP recovery. 3 transfers, 72 hours, $372,000. Let me bring Arthur and Mildred back one final time. Arthur Paczynski was formally admitted to the Grand Rapids Nursing Facility on Friday, April 17, 2026, as scheduled. The Michigan Lady Bird deed was signed Wednesday evening and recorded at the Kent County Register of Deeds Thursday morning. Mildred's IMAPT was executed Wednesday afternoon. The QCD letter, directing $22,000 from Arthur's IRA to Sacred Heart Parish and the Veterans Fund, was submitted to the IRA custodian Wednesday morning and completed before year-end. When Arthur dies, whether in 2 years or 5, the Dutch colonial will pass directly to Danny outside of Michigan's probate estate. Michigan DHHS will find no property in the probate estate to attach a recovery claim to. The Lady Bird deed will have been in place before the admission. The look-back period will have started before the admission. Michigan's own policy guidance, BPB 2018-006, explicitly recognizes that the Lady Bird deed does not constitute a disqualifying transfer. The house is Danny's. It is June 2026. Arthur has been in the facility for 2 months. Mildred drives the Buick to visit him every day. The fig tree at the old house, wait, that's the Garners in Louisiana. The tulips in Mildred's front garden. She planted them 30 years ago, and they still come back every spring. She tends them on the mornings she does not visit early. Danny comes on weekends. The house is still the house, and now it will stay in the family. The lesson the Paczynski family's Tuesday call teaches is not about the 3 transfers. It is about knowing that the window exists, that there is a moment before admission during which planning is legal and effective, and a moment after admission during which the same planning generates penalties. The difference between those 2 moments is measured in days, sometimes in hours, and the hospital discharge coordinator, the social worker, the nursing home admissions team, none of them will tell you the window is closing. This channel publishes early warning bulletins within 48 hours of a Michigan DHHS Medicaid policy update, a change to the Lady Bird deed's MERP treatment under Michigan BPB guidance, a federal CMS revision to the look-back period rules, or a court decision affecting pre-admission transfer treatment. When those changes land, and they do, you will hear here before anyone in the hospital system mentions it to your family. Subscribe. Hit the bell. The families who know about the pre-admission window are the ones who use it. The families who sign the admission paperwork first and call the attorney second are the ones who rebuild from what is left. Your sources are on the public record. Social Security Act Section 1917, C, the look-back period and transfer of assets penalty rules, is at ssa.gov, Michigan Compiled Laws. Section 400.112G, Michigan's MERP statute, is at legislature.mi.gov. Michigan BPB 2018-006, the policy bulletin specifically addressing the Lady Bird deed's Medicaid treatment, is available through Michigan DHHS. Bring all 3 documents to your elder law attorney and ask, specifically, what transfers can be made before the admission paperwork is signed, and what is the deadline. Be Mildred, who called the attorney before signing the paperwork. Don't be the family who called the attorney after. I'll see you in the next bulletin.